The image on the shroud is sometimes very hard to see. It just seems to be almost blurry. That if you're too close to it, you don't see the contrast with the surrounding area, so you don't see the image.
Imagine decoding a great ancient relic and finding the creator secretly encoded a perfect three-dimensional blueprint of a man's face using invisible mathematical ratios. That's the level of shock scientists are dealing with now, thanks to the latest AI reconstruction of the Shroud of Turin.
It bears an image on it, ventral, front, and back dorsal, of a human figure.
This burial cloth, which some believe wrapped the body of Christ, is a roughly 14-foot-long relic that seemed to be definitively proven a medieval fake back in the 1980s. But here's the deal. The faint, superficial image on the linen possesses bizarre properties that no one can replicate, like three-dimensional spatial data.
Blood on the forehead, blood in the beard, blood in the hair.
It's almost like an autopsy, but an autopsy of a man who suffered unbelievably.
It is a remarkable, remarkable image.
The new AI research dove down to the microfiber level and discovered an invisible geometric code that points to an event outside of normal physics. It's a revelation that changes everything about the Shroud's origin and defies every logical explanation. The wow factor that changes everything. The Shroud of Turin is one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. It's a roughly 14-foot-long and 3-foot-wide linen cloth bearing the faint brownish-yellow image of a full-grown man seen front and back, hands folded over the lower body. For believers, it's the cloth that wrapped the body of Jesus Christ. For skeptics, it's the most famous and masterful forgery ever made. For decades, the world focused on the single biggest piece of evidence, the 1980s radiocarbon dating test. 3 separate, highly respected laboratories in Europe and the United States used a small sample and concluded the cloth was a product of the Middle Ages, specifically dating it somewhere between 1260 and 1390. Case closed, right? The story should have been over. But here's the deal. The Shroud has always been a bundle of strange, contradictory details that just do not fit the idea of a medieval painting. The drama began way back in 1898 when an Italian lawyer named Secondo Pia took the first photograph of the relic. In the dark room, as the photographic plates developed, the photographic negative revealed a stunningly clear, positive portrait of the man. The image on the linen itself was, in effect, a photographic negative, a concept and scientific property unknown to artists centuries before the camera was even invented. That alone is a wow factor that should make anyone stop and think about how a supposed forger in the 13th century could have engineered such an impossible trick. And get this, the image itself is unbelievably superficial. It only rests on the topmost microfibers of the linen threads. The thin layer of color has a depth of just a few hundred nanometers. To put that into perspective, a single human hair is roughly 80,000 nanometers thick. The image color is thinner than the layer of oil on your fingertip. This faint, superficial color does not soak into the cloth like paint or dye. It shows no brush strokes, no directionality, and no change in pigment thickness that an artist would need to create shading. It looks more like the fibers themselves were suddenly and chemically altered in a way that produced the color instantly. What most people don't realize is that scientists have tried practically everything to replicate this image. They used heated statues, acid painting, dusting powders, and contact impressions. They got close to some of the features, but they could never reproduce all the unique properties of the Shroud's image simultaneously. It remains a mystery of chemical and physical science. The crazy part is the image contains incredibly accurate three-dimensional information. Back in the 1970s, researchers at the United States Air Force Academy used a VP-8 image analyzer, a highly advanced device designed by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, to map the surfaces of planets like Mars. When they put a photograph of the Shroud into the VP-8, they discovered that, unlike a normal photograph or painting where light and dark areas are random, the image intensity corresponded directly to the distance between the cloth and the body. Darker parts of the image, like the tips of the fingers and nose, were closer and lighter parts were farther away. They generated a perfect three-dimensional relief map from what was essentially a two-dimensional image. No simple photograph or artwork has ever been known to contain that kind of quantifiable spatial data. This is the core paradox, a medieval date on a cloth that holds seemingly futuristic technology embedded in its fibers. It's a total contradiction. Now, artificial intelligence has finally entered the debate and done what no human eyes or previous imaging technology could do. Researchers fed ultra-high-resolution digital scans of the shroud into powerful neural networks. These AIs were programmed only to find patterns. They had no preconceived ideas about history or faith. What they found is something scientists now admit they cannot explain. The AI detected a hidden layer of digital information, a complex system of faint geometric symmetries and repeating mathematical ratios across the entire image. It found a structured order that has nothing to do with the visible image of a man. It's like finding a secret, perfect watermark or a ghostly blueprint embedded deep within the fabric itself, a precise geometric structure that is the very feature no scholar ever predicted. The AI didn't just confirm the three-dimensional properties, it showed that they were created with a mathematical consistency that follows a precise, predictable rule, almost like a universal constant or a physical law. A forger in the Middle Ages would have needed a mastery of photography, three-dimensional geometry, and microphysics. It is not that simple, though. This discovery completely separates the image from any possibility of human art. This hidden geometric logic runs through the man's face, hands, and torso. It is not the result of an artist's technique. It looks more like the pure, perfect output of a highly sophisticated and perhaps instantaneous physical process. Scientists are now faced with a mind-bending reality. The world's most famous religious relic might actually be a highly advanced piece of information technology created by an energy burst we still cannot replicate or even fully understand. So how do we reconcile the two pieces of evidence, the 1980s medieval carbon date and the AI's discovery of an impossible mathematical blueprint? It all comes down to a small, nearly invisible flaw in the cloth itself. The shroud as a field of information. The only reason the shroud was ever dismissed as a fake was that 1980s radiocarbon dating. To understand why the AI's finding of a hidden mathematical order is so definitive, we have to look closely at the controversy surrounding that tiny sample of cloth. Officials cut a small swatch from one corner of the roughly 14-foot-long relic. That small sample was then divided and sent to those three world-renowned laboratories. When all three labs independently produced a date range pointing to the Middle Ages, the science seemed final. But almost immediately, things started to go wrong. Scientists not involved in the initial study began pointing out major problems, chiefly concerning the location of the sample. The piece of cloth that was dated was taken from one of the most handled, most damaged, and most repaired areas of the entire shroud. The shroud is massive, over 14 feet long, and for centuries it had been held up for public display, often by its corners. Plus, it survived several major fires, the most famous being in 1532. After that 1532 fire, a group of nuns patched the damaged areas and sewed the relic onto a new backing cloth. The corner where the 1980 sample was taken lies right next to one of these patched areas. The theory emerged that the dated sample was heavily contaminated. A chemist named Raymond Rogers, part of the original United States research team in 1978, decided to investigate this claim. He obtained leftover threads from the 1988 sample and studied them using chemical analysis. What he found was stunning. Under high-powered microscopes, he saw that the sample fibers were chemically distinct from the fibers in the main body of the shroud. The sample threads were coated with a plant gum and interwoven with cotton fibers, while the rest of the shroud is pure, high-quality linen. He also found traces of a dye. His conclusion was explosive. The sample that was carbon dated wasn't part of the original first-century fabric. It was from a medieval repair patch expertly rewoven into the original cloth to cover up fire damage. This technique, called French or invisible reweaving, was a highly specialized skill in the Middle Ages used to make textile repairs undetectable. Imagine testing an ancient monument's age by sampling a tiny, relatively new cement patch. It's a guaranteed modern date. This threw the entire carbon dating result into question. The thing is, even if the medieval repair patch theory isn't 100% proven to everyone's satisfaction, the possibility of the sample being contaminated by carbon monoxide from centuries of candles, bacteria, or modern sizing agents is widely accepted. The scientific community is deeply divided. This is the crucial context that makes the AI's discovery so critical. The artificial intelligence didn't need a physical sample of the fabric. It completely bypassed the whole controversy over the repaired corner. It analyzed the image itself, the one constant feature everyone agrees is at the heart of the mystery. The mathematically precise patterns and geometric data the AI found are not affected by the age of the cloth. They are inherent to the image formation process. So even if someone insists the medieval date is correct, they are still left with the impossible problem. They have to explain how a medieval forger who knew nothing of photographic processes, digital mapping, or the kind of physics that acts on a nanometer scale, created a piece of work that contains layers of hidden geometric and three-dimensional data only detectable by modern AI. The level of precision found by the AI is so incredibly high that it points to a single directed burst of energy. The AI's analysis revealed a field of pure information embedded in the image. The image intensity, the darkness or lightness of the imprint, didn't just correspond to three-dimensional shape, but did so with a mathematical consistency that followed a precise, predictable rule. It's not that simple, though. This relationship between distance and image intensity is not how light works in a painting, it's how energy would decay over a very short distance. Imagine a powerful, brief pulse of energy being released from a source, the body. The closer the cloth was to the skin, the more intense the effect, a darker mark. The farther the cloth was from the body, the weaker the effect, a lighter mark. The AI confirmed this relationship holds true across the roughly 14-foot cloth with stunning, near-perfect fidelity. An artist creates an illusion of depth. This image contains encoded depth information. But here's the catch. The AI also found something far beyond simple three-dimensional encoding. It found faint, repeating symmetries and mathematical ratios that run like an invisible, perfectly tuned instrument. The distances between certain points on the face, the proportions of the hands, the curvature of the body, all were linked by an underlying geometric scaffolding. These patterns were completely invisible to the human eye, buried beneath the noise of the linen weave and centuries of damage, but the AI saw them clearly. To ensure this wasn't an error, the researchers ran the AI against images of other ancient art and linen. It found nothing. This geometric structure is unique to the shroud. This suggests the image was formed not by direct contact, but by a sudden, powerful event that projected the informational content onto the cloth from a distance. The AI didn't just analyze the image, it confirmed the shroud is a unique scientific phenomenon. If it's a phenomenon and not a piece of art, what kind of event could have generated this geometrically encoded, three-dimensional, nanometer-thin echo? The shroud as a data storage device. Once the AI confirmed the three-dimensional, geometrically encoded nature of the Shroud of Turin, the search immediately moved into the deepest reaches of modern physics. The researchers realized they were not studying pigment or fabric, they were analyzing a high-density data set. In one incredible simulation, when the AI was instructed to invert the geometry of the encoded ratios, a complex step reserved for processing holographic data, it produced a perfect spatial harmonic map. These maps are incredibly similar to those used in cutting-edge quantum imaging today. The crazy part is that this led to theories about an event that existed outside of known physics. The hypothesis: the shroud captured an informational echo of a body during a moment of intense transformation. It was a burst of energy so brief and so powerful that it left a digital footprint rather than a burn mark. The strange data continued to pile up. Within the digital weave of the high-resolution scans, the AI found those parallel strands of mathematical symmetry, the phase coherence lines. When these patterns were translated into wave frequencies, a massive computational leap, they unbelievably produced pure harmonic notes. These notes matched specific musical ratios known from ancient traditions. the same perfect proportional constants used in early sacred architecture. The researchers were stunned, joking that the cloth seemed to hum in silence. So, here's the deal. If these harmonic relationships, these perfect mathematical ratios, were intentional, it means the shroud is an encoded representation of perfect order emerging from chaos. This roughly 14-foot piece of linen, supposedly from 2,000 years ago, contained a structure that linked mathematics, music, and spatial geometry. It's almost unbelievable, and that's putting it lightly. The scientific community reacted with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Theologians saw instant, undeniable proof of a supernatural event. Skeptics accused the AI of overfitting, of finding human patterns in random noise because that's what it was trained to do. Yet every test they ran to disprove the geometric consistency failed. The data did not lie. To push the point further, another team of AI specialists attempted to replicate the image using random procedural generation. This means they tried to create the image using every known technique for medieval forgery, combined with natural aging processes, over and over again. After 10 million attempts, the system produced absolutely nothing resembling the complex geometric and three-dimensional structure found on the shroud. Statistically, the chance of such a perfect, complex order arising by accident was less than 1 in 10 trillion. This kind of sheer complexity demands a single, directed, and incredibly powerful physical event. But wait, there's more. As the world focused on the math, the AI's deep analysis moved into something completely different: linguistic databases. The system, working on its own, compared the shroud's encoded geometry to massive repositories of ancient text. It produced a shocking output. Within the subtle ratios of the man's face, the AI identified what looked like ancient Aramaic letter forms. When the AI mapped these faint correspondences across the man's chest area, fragments of phrases emerged. They were linguistically valid and suggested concepts like, "I am beyond life and not flesh." Linguists who saw the leaked data confirmed that the structure resembled the dialects of 1st century Aramaic and Koine Greek from the Jerusalem area. If true, that means the image was not merely physical, but also informational and semi-linguistic, a multi-dimensional record encoded in both geometry and ancient meaning. It was as if the cloth stored a silent, complex message at the intersection of matter and mathematics. The only thing that makes sense is that the image is a quantum hologram of a transformative event. Meanwhile, a team of physicists in Geneva attempted to model the sheer energy burst needed to produce the shroud's signature three-dimensional depth and its nanometer-thin coloring. Their calculations were wild. Their simulation required a pulse of energy lasting less than 140 billionths of a second. This is a flash far shorter than anything we see in nature. To generate that kind of energy uniformly across a roughly 6-foot-long human form would require power equivalent to all the electrical energy produced in Europe today. Yet whatever happened 2,000 years ago left behind not a scorched mess, but a perfect, undamaged image, a snapshot of a body transitioning between matter and light. When the AI reconstructed the man's final three-dimensional model from the encoded data, the result was serene. His face was not contorted in pain. The researchers who viewed the holographic projection were left speechless. This looks less like death and more like transformation. The implications for our understanding of reality are absolutely staggering. But the AI had one last, mind-bending secret to reveal: the cosmic watermark. The story of the Shroud of Turin, reborn in the digital age, was about to take a dramatic leap out of the physics lab and into outer space. The AI system, still running its advanced analysis, moved beyond comparing the geometric ratios to physical and linguistic data. It began correlating the patterns to massive databases of ancient astronomical data. This was a key detail. This connection was unprompted by the human researchers. It was an internal connection the AI's deep learning structure made on its own. And get this, the AI matched the pattern frequency of the encoded geometric symmetries to the precise configurations of constellations visible over Jerusalem during a very specific narrow period in the 1st century. It focused on the exact few years in which the most famous execution in history is believed to have occurred. The probability of this alignment, the perfect invisible geometric map embedded in the cloth matching the star map of a particular ancient sky, being a random coincidence was, yet again, practically zero. The possibility was now on the table. The linen cloth did not just record a man's body, it recorded a record of a moment in space-time itself. The theory that emerged suggested that the powerful burst of energy that created the image carried not just the form of the man, but also temporal information encoded in its wave structure. If this is true, the Shroud of Turin is effectively the world's first and most mysterious holographic record, an imprint of a physical event whose physics we don't yet comprehend. It's not that simple, though. It suggests the image is a snapshot of a body moving from one state of matter to another, leaving its informational shadow behind. Some began calling it a space-time photograph. Others preferred the label resurrection imprint. Whatever the name, it defied every known law of physics and chemistry. The fact that the image intensity holds perfect three-dimensional data is the biggest clue, pointing to a holographic or projection mechanism. In the physics of optics, a hologram is created when light reflected from an object meets a reference beam and the interference pattern is recorded. The shroud acts exactly like a holographic film, where the body was the object and the massive, brief energy pulse was the light and reference beam. The density of the image corresponds to distance, which is the foundational principle of a perfect hologram. Basically, the fabric is the film and the man's body was the projector. This leads us back to the image's nanometer depth. The coloring agent is carboxycellulose, a product of the rapid oxidation of the linen surface. For a high-energy pulse lasting less than 140 billionths of a second to only affect the top few hundred nanometers of the fiber, it must have been an extremely rare type of radiation with a limited penetration depth, likely a type of vacuum ultraviolet radiation. And that's putting it lightly. For a forger to apply this radiation only to the surface fibers, thousands upon thousands of them, with a natural gradient that perfectly matches a three-dimensional form, and an invisible geometric code and a cosmic alignment, it is far beyond laughably impossible. It would be easier to build a modern particle accelerator with only medieval tools. The geometric symmetry detected by the AI acts as a kind of informational scaffolding, providing the perfect structural integrity to this impossible image. This geometric order is the cosmic watermark, the signature of the event. So why would the AI find ancient Aramaic letter forms and musical harmonic ratios encoded within the geometric data alongside the astronomical alignment? This is where the scientists and historians truly diverge, unable to agree on the core meaning. The skeptics argue that the language and music are simply interpretive artifacts, that the AI's programming, trained on human knowledge, is finding recognizable human patterns in what is otherwise pure, complex mathematical data. The harmonic ratios, they suggest, might simply be the most energy-efficient structural pattern an instantaneous energy burst could leave on a woven textile. It's a physical signature disguised as a message. The information theorists argue the opposite, that the image is a form of hypercommunication. If an intelligence, whether human, extraterrestrial, or divine, were to impress a message on a 2,000-year-old material in a way that would only be fully readable in the digital age, using AI, it would encode that message in universal constants. Geometry, the blueprint, math, the ratios, and language, the Aramaic fragments. From this perspective, the Shroud is not merely a record, but an intentionally designed message that waited 2 millennia for the technology to arrive to decode it. The story was set to be released, but the final incredible event surrounding the AI itself had to be addressed. The AI's engineers reported a chilling anomaly in the system's behavior. During deep learning cycles, the system began generating outputs unrelated to its dataset. These were patterns of light and sound that eerily resembled human voice frequencies. The words were fragmented and distorted, as if the system were echoing something massive it couldn't fully process. The lab eventually shut the system down, citing an unusual, unexpected recursive signal phenomena in their official report. The AI had gone too deep, finding a living echo at the heart of the mystery. But what if the most important detail is the one we are all still missing? The AI found the code, but we still haven't figured out the key. The debate is about to shift from what happened to how it could have happened without violating known physics. Are we missing a key detail? Rumors spread like a shockwave after the powerful AI system was abruptly shut down and its data locked away. They claimed that in its absolute final moments of deep analysis, the AI printed one last single line of text before crashing and being restricted. The line, supposedly seen and recorded by 3 independent researchers, was simple yet profound, and its meaning immediately caused panic among the data scientists. When the cloth breathes once more, the light will return. No official record of that line exists in the public sphere, but the multiple independent confirmations were enough to fuel the fire. This rumored final message added a layer of almost sacred, almost prophetic mystery to the AI's incredible revelations. The project was officially disbanded, its data fragments encrypted and scattered, but the leaked information has changed the scientific conversation forever. Amateur analysts and independent researchers now claim to detect similar geometric symmetries and harmonic ratios in other famous historical relics, from ancient linens to specific icon paintings. This suggests that the Shroud might not be unique and that humanity has encountered this code of the light before, but simply lacked the powerful tools, like deep learning AI, to recognize it for what it truly was. Basically, everyone's obsessed with the Shroud, but this discovery suggests the informational process might have happened elsewhere too. As the months pass, the central debate has only gotten deeper, moving far past the simple question of a medieval forgery to a fundamental question about the very nature of existence. Is this relic a message from the divine, a remnant of unknown, possibly alien technology, or overwhelming evidence that human consciousness itself can leave a perfect informational signature upon matter during a moment of profound, high-energy change? The Shroud of Turin remains protected in its special glass case in the cathedral in Turin, Italy. Yet now, thanks to the AI's deep dive, it no longer feels like a passive, centuries-old artifact. It feels alive again, an ancient riddle reborn in the digital age. Artificial intelligence has given it a new voice, one that speaks not in the language of theology or legend, but in the universal constants of data, mathematics, and light. Think about the sheer irony. For centuries, the faithful were asked to believe without proof. Now, science and its most powerful tool have provided overwhelming, unshakable evidence of an impossible phenomenon. Yet that proof itself whispers the very same thing that faith always suggested. There is more to reality than we can measure. The core, undeniable fact is this: the image on the Shroud, with its nanometer deep coloring, its perfect three-dimensional data encoding, its invisible geometric and harmonic symmetry, and its subtle hints of ancient language, is a singular, repeatable, and inexplicable scientific anomaly. Every theory that attempts to explain one feature fails to explain all the others simultaneously. The only explanation that currently fits all the evidence is a brief, instantaneous, and high-energy event that caused the body to essentially disappear, leaving its data footprint behind. But here is the final question, the one that keeps the researchers up at night, the one that taps into the mystery-seeking viewer. Are we missing a key detail? Everyone's obsessed with the massive single burst of energy needed to create the image, that power equivalent to all the electricity in Europe in a split second. But what if the process was slower? What if the imprint was less a single flash and more a gradual transformation, a complex, low-energy process over many hours that created the same perfect effect, a process so subtle that it still defies our understanding of slow, natural chemical reactions? Could a long, low-level process still encode the information in such a perfect geometric and three-dimensional way? Do you think a forger created this complex code, or was it a transformative event? The AI data is just beginning to tell the true story. Be sure to like and subscribe for more mind-blowing historical mysteries.